Benin's coup attempt, Ecowas intervention. Was it a strategic move or a hidden fist? Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. A coup cap is almost settled in Benin Republic barely 5 months to its presidential elections, built for April 2026. The move to unseat incumbent President Patrice Talon on December 7, 2025 in a mutiny led by Lieutenant Colonel Pascal Tigri, citing Talon's leadership deficiency, especially in terrorism, among others, was swiftly foiled by Nigerian president or Nigerian troops with intelligence support from France. ECOWAS standby force was equally sent to arrest the situation. The timely intervention yielded a positive result, but however, sent shockwaves through regarding Nigeria's President Bola Tinubu's rapid intervention, despite bearing a burden of an unending fight against terrorism in his country. Notably, President Patrice Talon of Benin, whose mandate is culminating soon, vowed to bring to book the perpetrators of the mutiny, which he said could destabilize the country and put its democracy to the test. However, it's time to ask critical question. Why would a mutiny occur just months to elections? Was the attempt to unseat President Patrice Talon's government a manifestation of genuine political dissent or perhaps a response to a growing dissatisfaction with his regime? Does this have to do with the political engagement or arrangement in the events leading up to the April 2026 presidential elections? Also, what's hidden beneath the surface of Nigeria's swift push to repel the coup? Did it represent a strategic move to prevent a spillover effect or just a move to protect France's sphere of influence in the region? Is there a deeper, intricate web of geopolitical and geostrategic events in the West African sub-region, particularly under the control of the West African Economic Bloc, that is ECOWAS? It is actually time, ladies and gentlemen, to unpack these questions and decode more the intricacies of a problematic Thursday, looking at the move by Nigeria's government and also the ECOWAS standby force to swiftly intervene in the political event marking neighboring Benin. And of course, we want to answer all of these questions if actually this represented a strategic move and a preparedness for ECOWAS, or actually it revealed a hidden fist in the embattled economic bloc in the West African sub-region. Together with a panel of experts, we're going to answer all of these questions, but then I will join you right after the jingle. Welcome, and if you're just tuning in, this is Global Insight on Pan-African Television. Ladies and gentlemen, we continue to revisit the political events in Benin Republic after a full coup d'etat. And our focus this day, while looking at the event that actually necessitated this action, we also want to ask questions. We want to borrow this slogan that question more to understand the real state of affairs in Benin and in the West African sub-region, putting geopolitics and geostrategies at the forefront as we unravel this very important topic rocking the political sphere of Benin and the whole of West African sub-region. Welcome, and time for us to uncover the panel. And without much ado, I take you to the United Kingdom, where we welcome Dr. Andy Mba Okweni, who is a geopolitical analyst and also geostrategist, who doubles as a researcher. Thank you for joining this discursive program this day, Dr. Mba Okweni.
Merry Christmas.
Looking forward to having a constructive discussion with you to North Africa, we are privileged to welcome Professor Dr. Laït Zaglami, Algiers University Faculty of Information and Communications. Welcome to yet another edition of Global Insight.
Thank you, Clarisse, for having me in your program, and also thank you to the distinguished panelists, and I'm looking forward for an excellent debate.
Always a pleasure. And to the United States of America, let's say hello to Alton Mobley, journalist, historian, and IEC Lawyers Guide Observer. Thanks for joining us this day.
Good morning, Clarissa and panel, and thank you for inviting me, and looking forward to a great discussion.
Looking forward to that. Subsequently, we'll be joined by Dr. Eddie Eric, Global Analyst and Executive Secretary of the Committee of Action for Côte d'Ivoire. Ladies and gentlemen, we go to the preliminary with you, Alton Mobley. We want to understand your holistic analysis of the recent coup attempt in Benin Republic, and the consequences of such, given the country's embattled political sphere.
Well, I think Benin is very important to this discussion, but because of what happened in Benin in the last few days, it certainly has shown itself to be a bright spot in the overall movement to free Africa from colonial domination. Finally, these efforts are extremely helpful, and particularly Benin is important because Benin is the key to unlocking the Sahel states. They are landlocked countries, and they need access to seaways and to be able to access ports somewhere. And they need unfettered access as any other country or any other group or movement would need and require. And Benin is actually vital and key to that. There are certainly other countries that could be access portals, essentially, to allow countries to be landlocked. This is a war about geography, and we need to recognize that as the rest of Africa and as the rest of the Pan-African community and the world needs to understand that the Sahel states need help, and they need help from all of us, and they need help from every persuasion and perspective. So that's my firsthand look at this.
Alton Mobley, and of course, let's welcome Dr. Eddie Erica, Global Analyst. Welcome, sir, to this important program. We're going to give you the go-ahead this time around to give a holistic analysis where we actually look at the consequences, events that led to the coup, the consequences, and also potential complexities of France's sphere of influence in West Africa and its implications, and particularly Nigeria's position.
Clarisse, thank you so much. I want to start by apologizing to my co-panelists for the lateness, some family issues that I have to take care of this morning, and other prior engagement as well. As we look at what happened in Benin, putting it, in the larger regional geopolitical context, as I already heard one of the panelists mention, we are witnessing a resurgence, right, of military forces re-entering politics. This is something that, were weighing down about 20 years ago, and especially in the case of Benin, who between the 1960s years of independence to 1989 became actually the model of this re-democratization, if you want. We all know that, in West Africa, this movement that we call the revival of democracy that ended the one-party system for a long time started in Benin, and we remember how under the rule or the direction of Bishop Catholic, prelate de Souza, Benin engaged in what we have known as the paradigm shifts. And this paradigm shift, became very important, and the template that has actually that gave birth to what we have seen today with the different political alternation in Benin. At the same time, from 1989, we saw what happened in Nigeria, a country that also was replete with military intervention, up to the latest one when General Sani Abacha was in power, died. General Abu Salami Abubakar engineered this wonderful transition that led to this usual election that we have. Nothing is perfect so far, but at least in terms of the military not being that present as it was in the period of the 1960s, 70s, and 1980s, we are seeing, as I said, a resurgence. Why is that? In my first analysis, I believe that, it is because of the failure of the civilian regimes that were being put in place. As we talk about, unconstitutional regime changes that many African or all Africans population actually wanted to see, we are clear, for me, that the civilian regimes have failed as well. Why have they failed? We have seen so many times elected government manipulating, the constitution to remain in power. So this is one of the reasons that are leading to that. The second reason is the promises. The literature that was available in the 1960s, again, 1970s and 1980s, that the military used to justify the entrance in the political arena or overthrowing political regimes is about, because of poverty and because of the fact that the African countries and African citizens and the workers have not benefited, right, enough from the vast mineral, agricultural wealth that their countries are endowed with. Today in Cote d'Ivoire, for instance, even though we're not talking about the political coup there, the largest cocoa producer in the world, what is the fate of the cocoa producers themselves? What is the fate of the cocoa farmers? After so many years of being the number one cocoa producing country in the world. We have the same thing everywhere. So this is, for me, the second reason that justifies what we have. The third reason, of course, if we do not pay attention, we saw Guinea-Bissau not long ago. We don't even know till today if it is a real coup or if it is a fake coup or if it is a palace revolution to change things like that. But I am afraid that, we are going at the example of Benin towards the repetition again of coup in countries, especially where it happened before. The second thing I want to say, in terms of the geopolitical or the intervention of France, of course, in the early hours of the coup in Benin, when this military junta, announced that, what they have taken over, a few hours after, we hear that, what President Talon has been reinstated. Of course, we have to wait to hear again with the testimonies on the ground that, you have the intervention of France military troops from Cote d'Ivoire. What does that mean? The whole idea about the dismantling of the French military base in Cote d'Ivoire is actually what should I say? It's a gimmick. It is not a reality. It does not suffice, to shift the things around and then say that, we have given back this military bases and that, French is out of the picture. That is not true, and then we just witness that. It reminds me of the French, mercenary intervention years ago against the regime of President Kirikou at the time, when we talk about the intervention of mercenary leader Bob Denard. It is the same thing that, what we have witnessed today. And then you have the intervention of Nigeria. Here again, maybe the debate will reopen in the Nigerian Senate about, when did they give authorization to the president, of course, with his discretionary power to intervene in Benin the way it was done. Having said all of that, I want to agree and side with the brothers who spoke earlier there is also a huge political or geopolitical game being played. When you have the coup that happened in Guinea, today nobody is talking about that as much, even though Mamadi Doumbia in Guinea has waited a long period of time before giving putting an end to the transition with the election that are coming up, and he's also running for the presidency. This is not being talked about, in what we know international media. It means what it means, especially that Guinea just launched what is going to be the most important, right, mining sector or mine in the world with the Simandou project. And then next door, you also have what is going on, the ECOWAS, which is actually fragmented today because of the departure of these three other countries. Of course, you understand that there is a call again for this country to come back. So this is my analysis that I want to throw in there. Number one, to summarize, I believe that the failures of the civilian regimes in Africa is, especially in West Africa, is paving the way again for the repetition of the military coming in power. So, second thing, populations are not enthused with political coup, but they are also not enthused with civilian regimes, maintaining themselves in power when poverty is continuously being perpetuated, and when people are manipulating, constitutions here and there. And then we see that, all over West Africa. And then you have the situation with the ECOWAS. Remember that Nigeria wanted to intervene directly in Niger to restore the regime of President Bazoum when he was overthrown by Chiani. Okay, this did not go through because the Nigerian citizen, the Nigerian Senate, and the elected officials over there reacted to that as being a provocation because of the proximity between Niger and Nigeria in there. But today, it was done in a very coveted way for the Nigerian army to intervene in. And then in the hours after that, we also hear about this rift between Burkina Faso and Nigeria because of this military airplane that was intercepted over without authorization in Burkina Faso airspace. So let me end on that by saying that, there is some sort of a resurgence of a lot of geopolitical works here and there, a resurgence of instability, but at the same time also the light that I see in that is the desire of the West African citizens, men and women, to live in societies that are very democratic in their own ways, but that are also very stable and peaceful so that people can work, people can feed their families, and people can attain and live peacefully instead of living in either military or civilian regime that are actually not performing or upholding the promises that they make to people. Clarisse, I want to end on that. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time, Dr. Eddie Eric. Thank you for throwing insight on this very important topic that we continue to look at the effect of torture in the West African sub-region, given the position of the Sahel states, and of course today the fight for the sphere of influence. Can we allude some of these reasons as to why there was this mutiny or act of mutiny in Benin Republic? And we will be answering that question with you, Professor Laid, because pundits have been asking why should there be an attempt to unseat the president just few months to the political presidential elections. Can we say that there was a leak in some intelligence information showing some political maneuvering that will already undermine the impending presidential elections come next year?
Yes, thank you, Clarisse. I think the best of my knowledge regarding what happened in the well, some analysts would say it was a staged attempt coup. I mean, in other words, it was a fake one, because when they have the election and the results are not in favor of the incumbent party. So they stage this. I mean, let's make it this way. They have some kind of collusion with the army to intervene in order to restore the situation. But I don't know exactly why such things happening very easily in west part of Africa. There are, as we know, 4 or 5 years, there were so many attempts to whether they failed or they succeeded in Western Africa. So there is something particular about this part of Africa. And the last attempt in Benin illustrates that there is a situation of uneasiness and pressure from within the population of this country, besides all what they said, he said, Dr. Eddy, about fragmentation of the Regional Economic Commission. This problem, I think there are tears off between those who want to be supportive of African solution for African problem and those who are still expecting the French intervention. This is the main issue. Besides that, what we see the last couple of years or so, there is, after the end of the Soviet Union and the end of what they call the unique party regime and the socialist regime and the communist regime in 1989, the revolution of 1999, so there was a sort of an euphoria for a multi-party election. And there is a lot of analysis, and I would say a lot of projects and a lot of attempts for election, and it became an act of electoralism. So in order to get in power, to remain in power, so okay, they go for multi-party election. And then suddenly and unexpectedly, the beginning of this century, on the early 2000, on early 2020, unfortunately, we have an unexpected string of military coup that swept the whole part of Western Africa. For sure, I would say democracy is failing. I would say more than that. Democracy is backsliding, and it is really, unfortunately, it is due to so many factors. One of them is that those who are elected, they don't care about those who have elected them. I mean, they don't care. They do care about their own needs, their own interest, and there is so many misconduct of elected leaders, as well as there were so many of them involved in corruption, manipulation, and of course, more than that, they tend to change the constitution. Well, if the constitution imposed 2 mandates, they once in power, they want to remain in power for so long, and then they have to change the constitution. What is amazing is the attitude of the African Union. And from that, we have to remind ourselves, there was a resolution by all African leader and president and prime ministers of the whole African Union. They called for, they revoke any what they call unconstitutional government change. Unfortunately, the only means they use to blame or to impose sanction is to freeze the membership of those countries. Is it enough? It is not, unfortunately. Now we have 5 or 6 countries within the African Union. Their membership are frozen. Sorry, but what else? Do the African Union use the military action? I don't know. Although they have what they call a standby force, a military standby force, which can maybe intervene. And the example of what's happening now in Ecowas in the Western country, I don't think the military intervention will solve the problem. Let me sum up here on one word. I think as Eddie said already, I think those civilian leaders who got to power through election, sometimes rigging one, rigging way, they should have met with political accountability. They should have been accountable to those who elected them. Unfortunately, there was some kind of collusion, as I said, between politicians and the military. And this is why, unfortunately, at the expense of the population and of the misery of the population there, and that's why now the experience of democratic regime, of democratic election for last decade or so have been unsuccessful, and that's why there is sort of I would say sort of welcoming from the population of those countries where democracy has failed. They prefer authoritarian regime rather than a fake democratic one.
Of course, this brings us to conclusion that the West African sub-region is at the crossroad at its navigator as it navigates its democratic processes of ensuring constitutional rights of incumbents, and also tackling the geopolitical problems in the region. And we continue to bring a topic to context with you, Dr. Andy. Still having, Nigeria was a major stake in thwarting of the recent coup d'etat in the Benin Republic. We've had lots and lots of interpretations as a strategist, and also very having high proximity with the Benin Republic and Nigeria. We want to have your contextual analysis of the attempted coup in Niger and the underlying factors that must have led us to the situation.
Okay, thank you very much for the opportunity to throw in my thoughts on this very important subject at a time like this. One thing is sure, um, national security has become a global concept. Every country wants to put up a military that is capable of securing national borders. Um, and that can only be achievable if you have a government put in place to oversee all of that. But beyond just militarizing nationhood, there is the very important subject of human security, how survival should be organized and put together so that citizens can consider themselves as citizens in the full sense of the word, with everything that accompanies the status of citizenship, and that includes rights and privileges, that includes the ability to have a means of livelihood that is credible. Now, if you look at this entire process from this spectrum, you would quickly realize a widening gap between those who are leading and those who are considered citizens. And from this context, survival, if questioned, is necessarily going to push people to the extreme. And when you push people to the extreme, they are going to define measures with which they can communicate their resistance. In democracies, we usually preach support for democratic institutions, consolidation of these institutions so that it can actually portray the feelings, aspirations, and fears of the people in terms of policy development and implementation. Is it possible that there is a connect between what the people are saying and what the government is doing? And in resistance to this, having tried several democratic avenues, such as communication through forums, presentations in conferences, legislative processes, and all of these middle level channels of communication, is it possible that there is failure on the part of government in listening to what the people are saying, such that it is breeding a new form of frustration that has probably extended or expanded to the military, or the military seeing itself as the middleman to bridge that gap when it becomes too hurtful for the people. Now, that is one context to looking at this. If you look at what happened in Benin, you might want to say it is completely strategic, and a demonstration of a sort of hidden fist of ECOWAS, because in the first place, it was pulled out to safeguard regional democracy. But what is democracy? What democracy are you safeguarding if the people themselves have not been safeguarded? If the means of livelihood of the people is constantly humiliated on daily basis, if life expectancy is poor, if the medical and public health institutions are dilapidated, if the indicators of economy are seeming great, as they are currently in Benin, the economy is rising at about 7.5% as of 2024. But if you compare that to the unemployment rate in Benin, you see that there is widespread unemployment and poverty. So you understand this better when you tie human security concerns to the issue of militarization in the Sahel region. Today, we have about 3 countries that have pulled out completely, and that's talking about Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. And just in recent time, we are now talking about Guinea-Bissau, we're talking about Sierra Leone, and now Benin Republic. What is the underlying concept that has brought these Saharan African countries together with a simple concept of using the military to solve national problems? It might be that the kind of prescription put out there to solving problems is inconsistent, it is incoherent, it is illogically fit to the problems typical to the region. So if you reduce all of these issues away from the common rhetorics of realism and show of force, as I see the ECOWAS doing, you might be creating a lot more problems for yourself, because really, when human security problems begin to crack on the walls of a nation, it's going to survive any government. The government can come and go. Those problems are definitely going to remain, and it keeps going on and on and on and on until someday the incoming government might just be too weak to sustain the momentum, and the military might take over. So dealing with such issues is dealing with issues of economy, dealing with issues of inflation, dealing with issues of debt to GDP, dealing with issues of unemployment, dealing with issues of trade dependence, credit rating, poverty, and the rest of it. In fact, the entire economic management processes needs to be overhauled, and that is only when you can have peace. Talking about Nigeria, would you say that Nigeria is in such a fantastic place as to wanting to boast of the regional superpower? No way. It is equally having its own toll of bad leadership, inept and corrupt leadership, unaccountable leadership, and all of that. And voices have erupted from the north, south, east, and west. I smell some kind of conspiracy theory. That's okay. But the best position to situate these is to look at it from the angle of human security. And the people are not having the best, though economic figures might seem great or probably even developing, but it is still at unilaterally poor level, and you don't expect so much if the people consider themselves citizens living in a country rather than citizens of a country. Thank you.
Brings us to you, ultimately, to ask categorically if, from the introductory analysis given by the guests so far, can we say that the coup attempt was a justified one, if looking at it from the perspective of the the human interest in the country. And secondly, let's highlight the aspect of the conspiracy theory, which Dr. Andy just highlighted, though, because in the preamble we asked a question: if actually events leading up to the 2026 presidential elections have been problematic, or maybe there are still some inside information that is yet to be revealed to the public, explaining why the mutiny led this maybe a coup d'etat that was started in the Republic of Benin.
Well, certainly there could be a lot of conjecture at this point as to the roots and the causes of this particular coup or coup attempt.
Yeah.
We don't know and don't have enough information on the participants in the coup as to really ascertaining what their motivations are and what they were. Hopefully that information will come forward. And I think we can generally suspect what's going on by the lack of democracy in Africa, the lack of democracy really anywhere in the world. We can't point to any country on the planet that has a model democracy. There's no such thing. What seems to be the pattern in Africa is a modelization after possibly some countries in Europe, and then looking to the United States, which are all terrible examples. They're mostly monolithic structures that have at best maybe a 2-3 party system, and people are competing to try and master and control the same institutions in those countries. And basically that's it. I can certainly speak for what's going on in the US. We got a 2-party system, which is really seen and perceived as a 1-party system with just 2 angles and 2 wings of the same plane, or the same bird for that matter, the Democrats and the Republicans. And so it's not a very good model of democracy, and by anybody's state. When an election is held, you get a fractionalization of a series of positions in one direction or the other, but it's very marginal, and it's very designed so that it becomes predictable. It becomes a predictable, manageable system for some of the most elite people in the world. If that's what Africa wants to model itself after, then Africa will get those things. However, I don't believe that the populace is that naive. And I think that that is really the bigger picture that needs to be painted in analyzing what we're seeing in Africa. African people, the African youth, the African population is not as naive as people seem to think. That's why we have the popularity of Mr. Traoré in Burkina Faso, and Assimi Goïta, and what is going on in Guinea, and what certainly Idris is trying to facilitate in Chad, and all the way over to Senegal and Ivory Coast as well. They're starting to, people are restless. Young people are restless. They're tired of this merry-go-round of politicians and people who are only there to assist those corporations that are raiding the countries, who are negating any importance of what people's desires and needs are at the populace and the popular level. They there continues to be a perception that we can just wax over the population, don't really have to pay attention to the youth in the street. We don't have to pay attention to popular opinion. We can just compete at the party level, and that's essentially all we need to do. Well, that is a failed policy, and it is a failed uh, strategy. It's old as the colonial movement itself, and so the rise of militarism is really the only way that the people and the military see to make adjustments in Africa. And I don't say that this is a negative. I don't say that this is a complete panacea for what needs to happen in Africa, but it is a direction that is firmly in the right in the right direction towards an independence movement where we shift the means of production and also the benefits of production to the people, to the populations, as what is going on in Guinea-Bissau, or what is going on in Burkina Faso right now. So it's a good model. No one across the world is looking at Burkina Faso and what is going on in Mali and saying, oh, this is a terrible thing. It is not going to work. There's no benefit for the populace in either one of those countries, when we all know that that is exactly why this movement is catching fire across the Sahel, across Northern Africa, and it is going to re-energize those aspects of what happened and occurred during the 80s in Southern Africa, where we had a number of revolutionary movements come to power, whether you're talking about Angola or Mozambique, or you're talking about Namibia or Guinea-Bissau, and certainly in that look back, Botswana, and then even South Africa were affected. So you're going to re-energize that. It is going to be a military situation because there's no such thing as a peaceful revolution. And like it or not, Africa is in a continuous revolutionary movement and a growing movement that is going to be based in military outcomes. There's no escaping it. And I think that Africa should learn to embrace the intelligence and the correctness of having a revolutionary movement that is more complete, and hopefully it will become more consolidated, so that we see African countries and nations consolidating their militaries and consolidating their forces to be able to fend off the nonsense of terrorism that's manufactured and imported into Africa and presented as what it really isn't. But we all understand, we know what's going on the ground in Africa. We have very good vision and very good ideas. Social media certainly has played a big part, and that is the hidden element in the room. People are intelligent, people have access to information, and they're going to use that to their own benefit and for their own needs.
Indeed, for their own benefit, it is time to ensure that there is availability of data to help fasten or maybe give more impetus to the revolution across the African continent, and the topic of democracy still hangs on the table. According to some pundits, who are analyzing the current situation in Benin, and even the intervention of ECOWAS, they highlighted the fact that ECOWAS has upgraded its preparedness given the situation pertaining the three Sahel regions of Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. And to bring us back to Benin, according to some pundits, since 2019, the leadership of President Patrice Talon has become very problematic, bringing us again to a contradictory point where ECOWAS is fighting to uphold democratic principles, and then we see a group of, this military coup in Benin, bringing us to asking the question where the level of maybe how the involvement, this question is directed to you, Chidi Kent, how the involvement of ECOWAS in the Benin situation will influence the political dynamics in the country now to the run-up to the and the run-up to the 2026 presidential elections.
All right, thanks for having me on. Thanks for all the great insights. First off, I would like to just offer some of my point of view regarding these ongoing coup attempts.
Yeah.
Of course, they are not organic. First off, they are not organic. As a Nigerian living in Nigeria, even with the problems, you hardly hear anybody desiring military takeover. It's almost non-existent. You don't hear anybody talking about that. So I do believe in 2025, any military coup happening is, of course, the effort of hidden hands. That's what I believe. It cannot be organic. The people do not desire it. The people talk of good leadership, but nobody nobody can imagine or wants to imagine themselves under military rule. Nobody imagines that. I don't meet anybody who talks about that. So it is not organic. They are timed, and even looking at the images, they look funny, they look phony as well. It's not looking like something serious. Essentially, I believe it was staged, and as many have hinted on this show, it has some impact to the upcoming elections. Maybe to drive emotions or to show a place of power. There is always a message in these things. The fact that there was a quick response from the Nigerian government, which I was shocked to read. I didn't know about that until just a few days ago. A precise operation to prevent civilian casualties. You see, that kind of narrative always softens the minds of people when you hear about civilian casualties. But I do believe that, just like your introduction, Madam, stated that Nigeria faces certain issues with security and terrorism and all that, and it would feel, or it would appear like there is no intelligence to handle it, but then we can quickly scramble to do a precise operation in a foreign country, right? So I wonder how that works. I also wonder what amount of military officers were involved that the loyal or good military couldn't handle and needed ECOWAS intervention, and it had to be Nigeria. Funny enough, I did not know much about this until this show started coming last week to my attention. But it sounded funny, and the introduction just aligned with my thought. And I feel there is, number one, something about stirring the emotions of people, right, for the upcoming election.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, putting a state of fear in the minds of people that there is a strong hand protecting the incumbent government. I believe these two things are part of it. I also like to look at the root cause of some of these things. I do believe that the situations in Africa, economic situations, political situations, are not things that are happening just because of recklessness. I believe those things are permitted to happen, or the system is engineered to be that way to keep Africa at a certain level, right? Where it is always easy to subdue the nations and continue to keep them at a certain level. I do believe, for instance, that finance is at the root of most of what Africa faces. Finance, interventions, and all that, they are the root of most of these issues. And provided there is always something, some instruction, there's always something that permits people to do what they want, then these things are going to continue. And I don't see how it's going to stop. I don't see how it's going to end, but we are hopeful that people will be able to, get a way forward. I don't know if elections will work. I don't know if voting works. I haven't seen it work so far, right? But the people do not want military intervention. That I can say. I don't know of other countries, but I think from Nigeria, I don't think people want military intervention, and I believe it is the same in other African countries and West African countries. People do not want military intervention. People want better governance, but they want it under a purely democratic context where they are free and everything works optimally, like those Western countries they look up to. That is what every African wants.
I will stay with you, Mr.
Thank
Kent.
you.
Let me stay with you. When you talk about coups not being organic, what are you insinuating? Like what happened in Benin? Was it actually a staged exercise that necessitated other stakeholders from the Ecowas zone to come in? We already recounted the situation in Guinea-Bissau. Or actually, was it also in a way to maneuver, like you said, to appeal for the emotions ahead of the presidential elections come 2026, to note that according to some pundits in Benin, because there's some sort of, you can actually tell the position of Beninese, it's actually at 50-50. Some still believe that even after the failed coup, President Talon is not in charge of the country. So can we get more understanding of you saying that they are not organic? If they are not organic, what is that hidden force that must have necessitated such an action, keeping the political sphere of the country in a very turbulent state?
Yes, I do believe, without sounding too conspiracy theory, conspiratorial, that it is indeed a staged event. I do believe it is. If you even look at just images are very crucial. If you look at the military people who were put on the, who came on the station, they looked funny. Those are not serious people, right? So it is staged. It is staged absolutely to drive emotions. I don't know who the hidden hand is. I would not say Ecowas. I do believe these hidden hands are much deeper, in much deeper places than we can see, or we can just point a direct finger and say, okay, this is the source of our issue, and this is where we can point it's coming from. But I believe that there are strongholds. There are agreements between leadership of different countries, even beyond Africa, most importantly, beyond Africa. I believe that there are agreements on how some of these things should happen. Because I just think, I may not know much about military, but I want to ask myself, what fraction of Benin Republic military was involved in the coup? And what fraction was not involved that couldn't hold down these ones where they were staging the coup? It's a simple thing that they needed a foreign intervention that was made ready so fast and so precisely. So this is why I do believe that it is staged. It is not organic, and the fact that it is happening, some may say people are being inspired by the success of one coup in the other place. But if we go deeper, we may find out that that is the desired outcome. That is the desired feeling they want the people to have, that this is working. So when it's done, you feel it's organic, but it's not. I don't believe the successful coups are organic too. I believe they are all staged. But the people have to be made to feel that they are working. And it's easy. You simply get certain things in the community to work. But at the end of the day, it's never going to be optimal, right? I always think about how much will Africa, or has Africa grown in the years up till now. It's very little. Some distractions, and you see it's very little. There's very little progress, right? You remove the distractions of having high-speed internet, for example, having television, having all that, and you see how much have we moved, and it's not so much. But you can easily get people to feel, wow, there's a lot going on. So that's just what I feel. I feel it's a hidden fist.
Okay. Thank you so much. Swiftly back to you, Dr. Andy. You know, as a strategist and a geopolitician, it is imperative to understand diplomacy has been at play in the West African sub-region. And when you look at all the narratives happening, and from the statement that came from France days or shortly after the failed coup attempt, haven't provided intelligence information to neighboring Nigeria, and then the Ecowas coming into play. Let's look at it from a diplomatic perspective. At this juncture, can we analyze the situation in Benin and West Africa as a whole, subjectively, without actually being so direct as to who must have been at the helm of the diplomatic display in the region, given its geopolitical importance and in the sphere of influence in this 21st century conquest and militarism across the African continent?
Okay, thank you very much for. You see, I started by saying that issues of diplomacy and international relations are normal issues that are usually considered business of state. And in pursuit of this business, states are necessarily going to build friendships, international relationships, blocs, alliances, and all of that. There is one fundamental driving force behind these engagements. It is the advancement of state purposes across national boundaries. And when you get states engaging in long-term military or political alliances, then that is when you might consider that strategic, all right, in nature. In the case of Nigeria and the French government, you see these sort of alliances playing out because of long-standing history that ties them together, and bilateral relationships that allows them to interact with one another. So it is normal to see how these activities unfold depending on the nature of interest that has been identified for each of these states. But I always say that majority of African states have not taken proper advantage of the international connectivity that they are privy to, right? Because oftentimes it's easy to push them in the direction that they don't even want to go, right? So when you push them in those directions, that doesn't mean you're being a strategic actor. You're being only strategic if you translate such moves to the advancement of your national policy, your foreign policy. And a foreign policy must be people-centered. It must be citizen-centered. So I don't see diplomacy or diplomatic ties in all of this. I see this as exploitative. I see this as oppressive. I see this as undue control of a people who ordinarily should have matured enough to understand what foreign policies, what international engagement should look like. People who should be considered mature enough to understand that it is the right thing to do to prioritize the interest of your state, its people, the economy, and the well-being of citizens. So what you see oftentimes predominating the kind of relationships that happen between Africa and some of these Western nations is what you might call an imbalance in a style that allows you to say who pays the piper dictates its tune, that in that sort of fashion. But it's becoming, like one of the speakers said, it is becoming too old and saggy because the African people have become too enlightened that if they sense anything going wrong, they are going to speak up. Whether the government is willing to accept it or not, people are going to speak up. And when you refuse to listen, they are going to identify other ways to communicate their dissatisfaction. So I feel that the breakdown that we now have in Burkina Faso today and the institution of a military regime led by Ibrahim Traore it's enough scare to allow another African country to slip away from such imperial authorities to total independence. And it is only logical to assume that such event will be resisted, and which is what clearly happened. That is what clearly happened. It is a resistance of another territory under imperial control being completely free. So it could have been the other way around. It could have been that, okay, Benin Republic is gone and we're having another round of military coup in the nearby borders of Nigeria. What is going to be the influence of such development on other countries? We now have 3 of those countries building a certain kind of bloc and have pulled out completely from the Ecowas region. All of this is sending terrible international signal that will not allow such imperial domination have a good sleep. So they would necessarily build friendship that would resist that would resist further control, that would, resist further loss of territories from such domination. So I don't see this as true friendship in the real sense of the word. I feel it's just another kind of manipulation that would allow African countries to remain suppressed, dominated, and independent, dependent. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Andy. And moving forward to you, Professor Layit Zaglami. In discourse analysis, we give direct and indirect interpretations to what must have been said. Now, according to some of the panelists on this platform, what happened in Benin seems to have been staged or having a spiral effect from Guinea-Bissau. And then some analysts also feel that actually with the resistance coming from the Sahel state, there are still tactics to see how they can, make the alliance more vulnerable, and as such, using Benin as a proxy, a proxy space to maneuver this destabilization tactic in the Sahel region. So let's try to understand the correlation or the proximity between the failed coup d'etat in Benin Republic and the fact that it has to do with a targeted attempt towards the established confederation of the Sahel states.
Well, I think from my own modest view, I would say what happened in Benin is reflects that African Union, the African continent is really losing its battle for restoring democracy, human rights, liberty, and so forth. And it's clear that I don't like I don't have enough information about at micro level, but I would say at the continental level, what's happening now in Western countries and through Western country is ECOWAS as the regional economic community is a complete failure. And here, African Union should ask why a regional economic failure in the West, why ECOWAS has failed to restore peace and security in that region. For sure, this is the main question. Now we have already in the ECOWAS, we have, I think, about 14 members. Now three or four have already left ECOWAS, and ECOWAS has no right whatsoever to impose any measure against them. With the attempt of a coup in Benin, I think ECOWAS is facing the same dilemma, and although we have the regional big power of Nigeria, which tries to impose its solution, doesn't work. What I want to say, I think now African Union and the headquarters in Addis Ababa, they are planned to meet for the African Summit in February. I think this kind of issues, the issue of how to deal with coup d'etat, have failed to this, as I said, to freeze membership of this country is not enough, because now the Confederation of Alliance of the Sahel State are enjoying themselves and having, they have building their own community, economically speaking, financially. They have even started cooperation with Russia on economic, political, and security matters. So, in other words, the example of the Confederation of the Alliance of States, of the Sahel State, is an example that African Union has completely failed to meet the objectives, and of course to not only to meet but also to implement and to observe, to monitor what they call the unconstitutional, as I said, government shell. I understand that now African Union is about to go through a strong scrutiny, a deep review of its policy on APSA, which is the African Security and Peace Architecture, which will be discussed next in February. So I'm quite optimistic about that. I mean, of course, African Union cannot carry on tolerate this situation of members not observing the rules, the democratic rules. But here again, let me ask myself and ourselves together, why democracy has failed in Africa? Why election? Why we have so many party election throughout the continent? Unfortunately, in some countries they failed. So I think time has come. We have to understand, or I would say to redefine what does it mean democracy in Africa. Is it to have to copy a Western style model, or we have to look for a consensual democracy within the Africa? This is what we should think of. We cannot impose any model of democracy from Western and do it within our community. There are so many I would say, particular aspect and context, social economic context in Africa. So I think time has come. We have to understand. We have to define, I would say, the parameter, the factor, I would say, even the meaning of democracy. What does it mean, democracy in Africa? And afterwards, we can, because some people think of democracy, you can organize multi-party election, and that is democracy. No, it is not enough. Democracy in Africa is still not rooted within the context of each community. So time has come. We have to review all this concept, and as some of our colleagues said, some people, some leaders are using democracy as using.
Unfortunately, yeah, we lost Professor Laid. Just to remind you, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, he's back.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, sir, you can write on.
Yes. So let me just say the last sentence. I said time has come. We have to review, to redefine what kind of democracy are we applying. Is not only does not have to be a Western style one, because this one has completely failed. So we have to go for a constitutional democracy in which everyone in the society agrees on all aspects of governing, on aspect of working, and so forth. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Laida. Just to remind you, ladies and gentlemen, that if you are just tuning in, you're onto your discursive and knowledge sharing program. It is Global Insight, and today we look at the questions which are not really asked, and we ask and answer the questions on this platform regarding the latest coup attempt in Benin, and analyzing how everything happened and understanding how this positions the country in West Africa, and in run-up to presidential elections, still asking why there was such a move, given that the incumbent is culminating his last mandate, as the country will be heading for presidential elections in 2026. According to a report, Patrice Talon has been facing lots of criticisms in his leadership maneuvering regarding all the aspects of security and other issues which are of utmost importance in the country. And according to some pundits, they equally looked into his foreign policy stance, which has become very problematic lately. And still, according to the reports in our research, it still gave a probability of a global geopolitical display, using Benin as an epicenter to try to cement France's sphere of influence, given that the country or the former colonial power has lost a vast majority of the countries in the Sahel region. And it explains to an extent the rapprochement between the leadership of Nigeria President Tinubu and that of France, bringing to question, because according to some analysts as well, initially Nigeria and France have never really had those very very strong partnership, because France looked at Nigeria in the past as a country that could overturn the geopolitical game in the region. But surprisingly, it came that the rapprochement between Tinubu and Emmanuel Macron at this very problematic era in the France's geopolitical dynamics across the African continent brought us to asking the question if Nigeria represents that hidden fist in the West African sub-region to protect not the interests primarily of the country, but then still serve as a protectorate of the sphere of influence of the of France. And this is what I will appreciate with you ultimately, if you draw more, maybe throw more light on the aspect on the position of Nigeria as a hidden feast. And then you said something earlier on about the democracy that suits the new revolutionary move for across the African continent. When such an event happened, we saw the comments from the African Union, the Ecowas as well, international organizations, the United Nations, and others bringing out strong statements. But then, how can we concretize those statements to be more practical, especially in line with the new dynamics of the revolution across the African continent? The two questions I'll appreciate if you draw more light on it, and as we continue to navigate this program.
Absolutely. I think Tinubu and Nigeria are playing with fire, and I don't think that they seriously are thinking about the consequences of what Tinubu done over the last couple of weeks in terms of what was done in Benin, in the position that Nigeria stepped up to represent in Benin. He actually took the position openly of working directly with Macron of France to, again, try to subdue whatever is going on in Benin, but in a more focused way, what is going on in the Sahel. He essentially attacked the Sahel states on behalf of Macron and London and Washington, D.C. So he clearly showed his hand as a operative of Washington and Paris at a minimum. Could be much deeper. I'm very concerned about what Tinubu essentially opened when he intervened. Again, this is a very dangerous development for Nigeria. All you have to do is look back at what happened in Libya, look at what is going on in the Sudan. When you invite intervention into the African continent, the people who come to intervene break things. They really get destructive, and it has no boundaries as to where that destruction is going to develop and go. You don't know where it's going to go. It almost goes out of control until those forces get what they want. In Sudan, they wanted the gold fields, and that's running back to the Darfur problems in Sudan was their strategy all along. They wanted to divide Sudan to get the oil in the south, to get the gold that was in the south, and that is what they are mining, that is what they are drilling, that is what they are doing, and they don't give a damn what anybody in Africa has to say about it. It's the rest of the country can starve, become refugees, be scattered to the wind. Is this what you want in Nigeria? This is what you're going to get in Nigeria when you invite the U.S. to put boots on the ground in Nigeria to help you resolve a matter of, say, hypothetically, Christian being massacred in Nigeria. They just pull things out of the air, and as a result, cause a configuration around it, and you get what you ask for. So I hope that Tinubu and the Nigerian people, more importantly, are thinking very seriously about what these people have in mind. And of course, it's a backdoor way to attack the military movements in the Sahel. That's all this is. We all know it, and we all can see it. We can play games with it, we can talk around it, and we can politic it to death. But we understand what is going on, and it should be radiantly clear to everybody on this panel as well as around the world. It is going to result in a scenario again that I don't think any of us intend. Now you can call that organic development. You can call it staged development as to these coups. And if you can seriously look at Burkina Faso and say that is a staged situation, I think you are probably one of the most naive people in the world in order to come to that conclusion. Burkina Faso is making some very serious moves towards at least giving its population some of the comfort levels that they need in order to function there temporarily. More importantly, I think what Burkina Faso has done in conjunction with Mali and Guinea in that situation has developed a groundswell of of a of an area, a region of the country that is starting to make sense in terms of it being an economic development region, a development for the prosperity and the re-nationalization of resources in the region, and is becoming a very serious model for the rest of the continent. Southern Africa is not unfamiliar with what is going on in Burkina Faso and Mali right now. And I think that that will be rekindled in the thought processes. It will be rekindled in the thought processes of people in Algeria. And it hopefully will start to connect even in Libya, where, again, those forces that were pushed out, Gaddafi's two sons, are attempting to rally movements there. And it seems as though they will come roaring back as a force in Libya as well. But this is what's the dynamic that's happening just below the surface in Africa that people don't want to look at. But you're going to be forced to talk about these things when you have people dismembering your country, as we saw in Sudan. And I'll stop at that point. I am just wanting to go on record as saying I'm quite concerned for Nigeria, and Tinubu is playing with fire.
Yeah, and this is where the bone of contention lies. If Nigeria is already, taking the position of Ivory Coast in being the mastermind of France's sphere of influence in the region. With you, Dr. Andy, if we are very categorical today about France's involvement, it's we want to go memory lane to the event that actually characterized the era of the implementation of a local currency within the West African sub-region. We're talking about the ECO, and we saw how indirectly France was going to influence that, and we bring us again back under Ivory Coast President Alassane Ouattara, like Dr. Eddie mentioned, and then another aspect of it coming in the era of heightened revolution across the African continent, where Nigeria joining the position of Ouattara to protect that sphere of influence that will, promote the hidden, exercise of the former colonial power in the strategic affairs of the country without new defined policies, which you highlighted that these policies will always be embedded in what we call as foreign policy dynamics of a nation.
Yeah, so oftentimes get um, we get shredded in aspects of this whole thing that makes it look like, okay, we are put together as an African people. We are willing to chart a way forward that would mean tangible process in how we seek to organized society and community life in the the continents or countries of Africa. But we also see that on the other hand, there is a raging form of resistance that never wants these ideas put on the table to be constructed into any tangible policy to work with. Now, this is not unconnected with what I called a failure of foreign policy design in Africa. Designing foreign policy in terms of literature or construction of literature is not the thing that we are referring to as failure of foreign policy. It is the willpower, it is the economic strength to match words with action to get us to a level where we can be taken, Africa can be taken seriously when it comes to the negotiation table to say, come the next 10 years, this is what we seek to be, this is what we seek to achieve. And watching the international stage take us seriously has become a mirage of its own because when Africa talks on the table, on the negotiation table, nobody takes that seriously. So having that sort of opinion, having that sort of mindset about a people is one that is devastating because when you get to a situation where people who want to advance their national interest are discussing how to achieve this interest and you show up failing to communicate the same willpower, failing to communicate the same strength, failing to communicate the same resilience that other actors on the international stage have brought on the table, then you would be seen not just as unserious, but incapable of engaging or doing business of foreign politicking, right? So for the challenges of building an effective foreign policy in Africa has been long-standing, and we have seen the failure of Gaddafi, and more recently the failure of Dr. Goodluck Ebele Jonathan in Nigeria, who was trying to completely democratize institutions and bring about independence of government institutions from undue manipulation and control. That government was toppled with all manner of lies and conspiracy, toppled with all manner of indecent propaganda that was thrown out there with the sole objective of winning elections. So when we throw away the real deal of governance and politicize governance, the nation and the people, for that matter, would be at the receiving end. So, like I said earlier, any foreign policy agenda that is not people-centered is going to be inept. It is going to be considered weak and poorly advanced. So, how countries perceive fellow countries is not barely a question of constructive rhetorics in terms of delivery of foreign policy objectives. It is in the advancement of pre-established policies. It is the advancement and emancipation of democratic institutions. It is in the independence of institutions in pursuing its constitutional duties. But this is not happening anywhere today. There is even the military today is manipulated, as it is the judiciary, as it is election management body, as it is the police. All of these institutions continue as it is the legislature. There is a total attack, a total manipulation of institutions of state, leaving it weak and helpless. So that state of helplessness cannot guarantee anything, whether locally or in the on the international stage. You cannot expect anything tangible from a state whose institution is completely hijacked. And so that is where we find ourselves. That is what we have done to ourselves. That is what we must liberate ourselves from. If there be any tangible or serious interest, serious determination to pull us out of there. It's okay to say that Africans are still lagging behind in terms of social security and in terms of delivery of healthcare delivery, healthcare services, education, and the use of mineral and human resources. It's okay, but what is going to give us out more disastrously is the continuous weakening, the continuous erosion of civil liberties and institutional democracies as we have it today. No country, no nation of the world has gone forward expecting development to be exported. It is indigenously developed, designed, and supervised from the home front. If the home front is continually weak and indecisive, you cannot have any tangible, for that matter, any tangible results, come what may. So for Africa, this is what I would rather suggest, that national capabilities should be emboldened, trade imbalances should be handled with optimum professionalism, and political instabilities should be dealt with. Political instability should be dealt with. The issues of debt pressures should completely be sorted out. And of course, there is capital flights. Politicians are taking monies to Swiss banks, to all manner of foreign capitals, foreign nations abroad. But that is never going to give anybody development. That is never going to take anybody to the promised land of development.
Absolutely, it is about thinking about the effect of your leadership on the population that voted you into office, and of course, see how that transforms the lives of the people you lead. Coming back to you, Mr. Chidi Chant, you mentioned earlier on about the fact that many people, according to you in Nigeria, do not abide to instances of coup d'etats. But then let's try to analyze the intricate paper where we have, uh, the internal political stakes, and then the fight against uh, probably I don't know if I should say foreign control without being particular with the nation at stake, because the world is a global village and there is actually room for collaboration in whatever stands. But then going to the markets of diplomacy or the table of diplomacy or negotiation without a defined agenda makes you already very limited. Here we want to look at the recent situation in Benin, that is the coup attempt, which actually did not only probably suffice to the local political crisis, but also an event that brought about the proximity between foreign intervention and African nations. Now there is this fight for imperial, geopolitics across the African continent in this revolutionary era. When we put all this together, in your own perspective, as a critical thinker on the development across the African continent and how the continent can categorically dissociate itself from the old or conservative policies that have frustrated development in the country. So, what tactic or maybe what can you read of this situation and proposing a better solution that will transcend the political will of African governments.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. Andy touched on something. He just chipped in something very important. I think he called it financial burden, or he called it debt burden, right? I think that is at the core of most of what African countries face. And he also mentioned something about institutions being corrupted and being powerless. I believe these things are by design. And I do believe that it will take a level of deep change from within the continent for these changes to happen. Now, regarding these debts, strongholds, these shackles that hold African countries, because these debts, they are continuous, right? Mm-hmm. For instance, Burkina Faso, does it still receive loans from the IMF, World Bank? Does it still receive those loans, grants? Yes, it does.
Please, can you mute your? I think the interruption is coming from Professor Laid. Please just mute your mic when you are not talking, so we do not have a disruption in the conversation. Thank you so much. You can continue, Mr. Chidi.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Yes. So, like I was saying, I said Burkina Faso receives loans, still receives grants, despite its front of being against the system, but it still receives these loans and grants. I do believe that the corruption of these organizations and institutions of government, as Mr. Andy has pointed out, they are things that can be handled. Let me paint a simple analogy. If I give you a grant or a loan, right, it is also possible for me to demand evidence of what you have desired that loan for. I do not know if these demands are placed on any of these countries ever. But the loans keep coming. I don't believe it is too difficult to demand these countries, when they receive these loans, to show in a very robust way how they are spending these funds, developing the countries, improving the lives of the people, improving the economies, improving industry. How often are these requirements placed? I don't think these demands are placed when these loans are given. So I believe that the loans and the whole finance is at the core of shackling these countries. And I do believe that it is like you can also throw crumbs at the people and make them feel good. But at the end of the day, there is a deeper level of corruption that holds things down. And it will, if you talk to people, it's like a lot of people do not have any hope in the government becoming better. They do not have any hope. Civil liberties, everybody dreams of it. That's why I would repeat again that I do not think I would meet anybody that will want military intervention, for example, in a country like Nigeria. They may have shown a model with Burkina Faso. It may be a model, and it might be a legitimate model, absolutely, as Professor Mobley has pointed out, a very legitimate model. But it's also possible that based on this legitimate model, there are people who would stage things and see if they can get the people to subscribe to their attempt. That is what I do believe. There is an attempt. So I will still say it is staged, and I will still say that for African countries to get ahead, it is not going to be easy. There are loans that are holding these countries down. I'm not so much of an expert in these things, but I believe and I know that there are loans, and these loans are at the core of holding these countries down. they are like a shackle on the throats for the people. The owners of the loans can place demands. I understand that every country is in debt. US is getting to maybe 30-something trillion in debt. Every country is in debt.
Yeah.
So it will appear that every country is in debt, and it doesn't even make sense. Right? So the figures are alarming. There's even a projection that goes up to 2035, how much countries will owe. So it's like it's something continuous. So it will appear that there is no quick solution in sight. What everyone dreams about is institutions that work. If you hear the comments of people, they want things to work within a democratic context. Because what works in one place successfully may fail miserably and put certain other countries in continuous war, civil instability.
Okay.
That is just it. It may put other countries in continuous instability. So the minds of whoever is doing this or doing that, we cannot say that it's as objective, right? I do not see any evidence, correct me if I'm wrong, of any citizens in any country demanding, or let's say Benin, I do not see any evidence of anybody demanding that military topple the government on their behalf, because who do you know is going to be the head of that government when they topple the democratic government? Nobody can guarantee that.
Okay.
I'm sure 99% of the people will not know anything about that. Right.
All right. Thank you so much. And
Yes. Thank you. Yes.
it brings us again to be asking this question of how the power dynamics in Africa, or maybe Africa's political rhetoric, is challenging its governance system, security, and even its international standing. With you, Professor Laid Zaglami, because when we look at the events in Benin, according to reports, the main opposition leader in the run-up to the presidential election has been disqualified from the contest. And also, according to some report, I cannot categorically confirm the veracity of this information, but then I want to use it for us to understand something like, though Patrice Talon has indicated not seeking re-election and not making amendments to the constitution, there's a political leader that represents his ideology that could even give him an indirect power to still have stakes in the government of that country. Here we want to now look at how the power dynamics in the West African sub-region, even Africa as a whole, is undermining the country's governance, its security patterns, and the social contract the country has with the population.
Yes, well, I'm a little bit, puzzled with why. Because at the level of African Union, can you hear me?
Yes, sir, I can hear you.
Yes, at the African Union leadership, we have the African Governance Authority. This is in Addis Ababa, as well as so many structures, so many departments and authorities. They should be implemented throughout the whole continent. That's what the purpose. But unfortunately, on the ground, we cannot see the implementation of such decision and measure. And the credo or the slogan of the African Union today is African solution for African problem. And if we speak about foreign intervention, because Africans themselves do not respect, do not observe, do not imply or implement what have been decided at the continental level. Now, of course, there is awareness throughout the continent after many years of election, multi-party election. Unfortunately, from 2020, we see a break in this process of election dynamic and democracy dynamism in Africa. And why? Because, and for sure, so many population are fed up with the promises that are not met by leader, politician, civilian. They are not met, and therefore, and more than that, we have to accept that there's a lot of misconduct of election leader. We have a lot of corruption. We have rigging election, mismanagement. All these things, and of course, and this and that have nurtured all the feeling of hate and of despair and of anxiety from the population. I don't think that the military have the solution. Although maybe they care for the destiny of the country, they are afraid for the security of the country, of their own respective countries. But ultimately, they should understand that time of military rule.
It seems we lost Professor Laida. We are almost culminating. We have just 9 minutes to be together on this platform. Then it is imperative to have recommendations. Starting off with you, ultimately, I think we have 2 minutes per person. The recommendation of concluding a statement pertaining the development in Benin and the West African region as a whole, and how the political maneuvering or the rhetorics can undermine governance and even the global security, not just of the region, but of the African continent as a whole.
Well, thank you again, Clarice, for the for the forum and the opportunity to be a part of it. The terrorism is the only staged element that we have in Africa right now, and that is being staged primarily from the West. They're blaming it on forces in Al Qaeda and out of the Islamic world, and that is a sad element and a sad development. But just getting to very quickly the financial status of Africa. Africa right now has a economy on a whole of about almost $3 trillion. It's 2.7, 2.8, but getting close to $3 trillion in the entire continent. The extraction of resources from the continent is much, much, much higher and has been for a number of years. If Africa combined forces and all of Africa consolidated, they would have an economy of in excess of $30 trillion. That's what Africa's value is to the rest of the world. And until Africa itself masters that, they will be fractured and splintered into segments that are hat in hand, begging from the West for loans, as Kent indicated. And those things will continue to straddle and hold Africa back, because loans come with strings. And that, just briefly and quickly, what I would just want to go back to the Gaddafi regime and look at what he was able to accomplish by nationalizing his own resources, the oil that was coming out of Benghazi, and why it was so strategic to take his organization out. He did not fail. Gaddafi didn't fail. He was a very successful regime, but he was essentially attacked by the West, and that country was dismembered by the West. But when he was there, of course, Gaddafi had not only cut off loans from the West, did not have any lending from the West, had control of his own economy in that country to the extent that he was a lender to the rest of Africa at a level that was higher than the IMF, the World Bank, and every Western country combined. Gaddafi had loans and was providing funding to the rest of Africa at that level. So it's amazing what an African country can do if we get out of the thinking that we're neocolonial states, we're vassal states. We have to do whatever the West wants and continue down that road. So again, I know it's a wrap, but that's essentially my statement.
Okay, thank you so much, sir, for that. Briefly, with you, Dr. Andy, your recommendations, given the complexities of imperial geopolitics in the West African sub-region at the moment, how it's affecting power dynamics as well.
Okay, so I like to generally approach these things from political economy dimension. So I'll just give us a quick rundown of some really important fact check, starting from Nigeria. Nigeria lost over 104% of its value in 2024, making it one of Africa's worst performing currencies, as it is with the Malawi's kwacha, which fell by 66% in 2024, driven by inflation and weak reserves. In Egypt, the Egypt pound underwent repeated devaluation as part of IMF reforms. There are other weak examples: Sierra Leone, Ghana, cedi, the Zimbabwean dollar. All of them faced severe instability, and this is leaving really instructive, very clear consequences. Number one, there is a terrible reduction of purchasing power. Ordinary citizens struggle to buy food, and fuel prices are on the rise. There is complete business disruption. Airlines and multinationals have billions trapped in countries like Nigeria due to currency controls. You have investor reluctance. Volatile exchange rates discourage foreign direct investment, which is what is highly encouraged over loan taking. Foreign direct investments and international trade over rentierism. And regional instability, which often spills into political unrest, fueling dissatisfaction with government. So these would be my parting shot. If these issues are dealt with, if issues of weak, incompetent nation are handled, if issues of entrepreneurship are emboldened, if entrepreneurs are supported, if the weakening currencies of the states are given adequate opportunity to thrive, then at the end of the day, I think we can take it up from there. So I'll make it short. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the great insight. Coming to you, Chidi Trent, you were very particular about the citizens' perception. So, as a concluding phase and recommendations, how do you think citizen perceptions of foreign intervention in domestic affairs, like what we recorded in Benin recently, actually influence national stability and governance in the countries of the West African states, particularly Nigeria, with the very, intervention that attracted mixed reactions from the country?
All right, thank you. Just as Mr. Mobley said, any interventions, wide-scale, robust interventions, usually end up badly. I was impressed the last events of Donald Trump saying they would intervene in Nigeria. A lot of people, if you looked at social media, said we don't want it. You know, that was something. It was something encouraging to hear that. Okay, a lot of people are beginning to see that there is a disadvantage to these things, and they mostly do not elevate these countries. And it has also been pointed out that Gaddafi did not fail, but the intervention, the destruction of that country was because of, that intervention. So that country was destroyed. He had a lot. And in fact, I'm learning here that he gave out loans. I've heard of things like the water projects. I've heard of a lot of things. And all those things were destroyed because he was simply, I think, presented as someone who is a risk to his people. But that wasn't true. And it's being confirmed by someone who I see is very informed on the matter. So I believe that the people want things better, but the people do not want a lot of these foreign interventions because it's becoming quite obvious that they have not helped extensively, right? People are seeing it very evidently that the economies seem to be going down. Prices, in fact, some things have gone up 500% in the last 3, 4 years, for example, in Nigeria. So, are these interventions working? Both financial interventions, military interventions, are they working? I would say not too well, not too well, because it may boil down to the minds of people, the intentions of individuals in leadership. Do people really want things to work? It may boil down to something as primal as greed. Are people focused? Do we have individuals who want things to work? So if we have one or two, and then the other 98%, you know, are not focused on those objectives, can these governments work? I think it boils down to this basic thing. And so these government leaders are simply bought up using the instrument of these loans and funds. I would not sound extreme by saying that I believe that some of these loans are essentially to buy off politicians and to buy off the countries. That's how the countries are owned. That's what I simply believe the loans are for. So they don't do anything. The people would be, it may come as a shock. You see, the people would be more confident hearing that the governments don't take loans. Again, whenever it comes to the news that Nigerian government, for example, has taken a loan, you see a lot of people are not happy about it. A lot of people are not happy about it. The people do not give their consent. Someone mentioned here about governments that involve the people. The people are not involved in any of these things because people do not see how it helps them. Things keep going down. I keep hearing loans are being collected. So, the people do not want these things. People want solutions indeed that are from within and are driven by true motivation, that are driven by true commitment by the people in leadership. Not someone, I always make this simple analogy. Someone from outside cannot tell you better than a place you were born in, you walked in, you played in, you grew in, you knew and you know everything about it, and someone out there tells you this is what we'll do that will work best. It can work in some scenarios, but the main responsibility is on the people, the leadership within these countries, right? I'm not against international relationships, of course, absolutely important, but it should be driven by sound decision making from within each of these countries. Thank you.
Of course, what the people want really matters. Recently, we saw the involvement of Nigerians when U.S. President Donald Trump said the U.S. was going to intervene in Nigeria. We actually saw many Nigerians calling for the U.S. to come, and that became very problematic. And it brings us again to a similar situation in Benin. I think these are some of the topics that will continue to throw more light on the effect of foreign intervention in a nation, in a sovereign nation, and how that can further bring about vulnerability or susceptibility of its security, governance, and whatever you can mention. We are rounding off with you, Professor Laida, with the way forward. What can we draw from the recent development in Benin Republic and in the West African sub-region as we continue to chart the African agenda in the sphere of a new world order, where we have new alliances coming on and people reviewing the policies of the old alliances that they must have formed in the world largely dominated by the USA.
I'm not done. Take it from me.
Please, Mr. Chidi, can you mute your mic? There's an interruption. Thank you, Professor. You can write on.
Yes, you are right, Clarisse. I think what I want to conclude, I think I prefer African intervention instead of foreign intervention, if there is the case. And since we have already African Union has decided in the past to mobilize around 2,000 or 20,000, I would say, standby forces. If this is the case, and this case of urgency, I prefer to have African problem being solved by African people. This is the principle. Now, this question of course, coup d'etat, it's a resurgence, as one of our colleagues said, resurgence of the 1960s. And we thought that afterwards we have really installed the democratic process. And once again, rebirth of resurgence of coup d'etat from the 2020. The question is, we should ask ourselves, why do we have this wave of coup d'etat in many parts of Africa, and particularly in West Africa? So we have to be positive, and we have to be practical to deal with the issue. Sometimes I don't support military solution, military I would say governance. But if it is necessity for the military to take over, I don't mind. But as long as in their program to restore democracy and to come back to constitutional rights, that will be okay. But in the meantime, we should.
Unfortunately, we lost Professor Laita once more. But then, ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of today's edition of Global Insight, brought to you by Global and Pan-African Television. And just to have a recap of what we discussed today, that the coup attempt in Benin actually represented a critical moment, not for the nation, but then for the whole West African nation as a whole. And of course, should the intervention of Nigeria and ECOWAS, if it represented preparedness and readiness, it's a milestone that has to be applauded. But then, if actually it represented a hidden fist to continue to protect the sphere of influence of the former colonial power, that's where it becomes very problematic, as it challenges overall governance across the African continent. And it is imperative that we should leave today's edition understanding that the boundaries existing, be it among leaders of states in the West African sub-region and Africa as a whole, are just artificial boundaries that I think is a toll for continuous separation across the African continent, making it very difficult to come in unison to chart the continental agenda that will facilitate development and improve the living standards of many Africans. So it is imperative to analyze this event that will bring us to the conclusion that there is need for careful attention to the economic, political, security events that are happening across the West African sub-region, having a direct effect on the governance structure and democracy. As we continue then to contextualize the definitions of these very global terms to suit the African agenda, while providing a scope for more fertile relationship with the international partners, as a country or continent can never function alone. Thank you again, ladies and gentlemen, for the great insider on our today's topic. And we want to trust you, actually appreciate you particularly for trusting the Pan-African Television as we continue to enlighten millions of viewers out there on the intricate web of political development in Africa and the global world, and see how we can develop tactics or strategies that will suit the world of the new dynamics. Thank you, and have a lovely moment in the company of transmissions on the Pan-African television.
This program was brought to you